In the sun-drenched kingdom of Elodria, King Theron was more than a ruler. He was a beacon of hope. His laughter echoed through the grand halls of his castle, a melody of joy that resonated with his people. Under his gentle hand, the kingdom bloomed. Fields overflowed with golden harvests, marketplaces bustled with life, and children played freely in the sunlit streets. Theron was not just their king. He was their father, their friend. He would walk among his people, his hand resting on the shoulder of a farmer, sharing a joke with a blacksmith, his eyes twinkling with genuine warmth. He ruled with a compassionate heart, believing that the true strength of a kingdom lay not in its armies, but in the happiness of its citizens. Elodria was a golden age, a testament to a king who loved his people and who was loved in return. But the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows. A shadow fell upon Elodria, swift and unforgiving. It wasn't an invading army or a political betrayal, but something far more cruel: the Crimson Plague. It swept through the kingdom like a wildfire, leaving only devastation in its wake. The vibrant streets fell silent, the bustling markets emptied. The plague showed no mercy, taking the rich and the poor, the old and the young, and it took everything from Theron. He watched helplessly as his beloved queen, the light of his life, faded away. He held his young son, his heir, as the fever consumed him. The kingdom he had built with love and care crumbled into dust, and with it, the man he once was. The smiling king was gone, buried under an avalanche of grief and despair. The man who emerged from the ashes of his world was someone else entirely, a ghost haunted by the faces of those he couldn't save. His heart, once so full of love, had turned to stone. The surviving lords of Elodria, seeing the king's despair, saw weakness. They saw an opportunity. They whispered of Theron's incompetence, his failure to protect his people, his family. A rebellion began to stir, a snake coiling in the heart of the broken kingdom. But they had misjudged the man sitting on the throne. The grief that had hollowed out Theron's soul had filled the void with something cold and hard as steel. When news of the uprising reached him, a flicker of life returned to his dead eyes, but it was not the warmth of old. It was the chilling glint of pure, unadulterated rage. The benevolent ruler was dead. In his place stood a warlord. Theron didn't just meet the rebellion. He unleashed a storm. The strategic mind that had once designed flourishing trade routes now orchestrated flawless, brutal military campaigns. He moved his newly forged army with a terrifying precision that his enemies couldn't comprehend. He anticipated their every move, exploited their every weakness. He was no longer the king who walked among his people. He was a specter on a black charger, his face a mask of cold fury. He offered no parleys, accepted no surrenders. The armies of the rebel lords were not just defeated, they were annihilated. He rode into their castles not as a liberator, but as a conqueror, his sword dripping with the blood of those who had dared to defy him. Mercy had died with his family. Compassion had burned with his kingdom. With the rebellion crushed, a chilling silence descended upon the land. Theron's ambition, born from loss, knew no bounds. He turned his gaze to the neighboring kingdoms, lands that had watched Elodria's fall and done nothing. He saw them not as neighbors, but as future subjects. His campaigns became legendary for their efficiency and their ruthlessness. He outmaneuvered the most celebrated generals, besieged the most impregnable fortresses. He used fear as his primary weapon, his reputation preceding him like a death knell. Cities would open their gates rather than face his wrath. Kings would bend the knee rather than see their kingdoms turn to ash. He was building an empire on the foundations of his own broken heart, a monument to his pain. Each victory was another stone laid, each conquered land another testament to the power he now wielded. He was becoming the most powerful man the world had ever known. The final rival king, a proud and stubborn man, made his last stand in the fortress of Aegis, a citadel carved into a mountain. He believed its walls were unconquerable, Theron did not bother with the siege. Under the cover of a moonless night, he led a small, elite force through treacherous, forgotten goat paths, scaling the sheer cliffs his enemy believed impassable. They slipped into the fortress like ghosts. By sunrise, Theron's banner was flying from the highest tower. He walked into the throne room alone. The rival king, stunned and defeated, drew his sword for one last act of defiance. Theron was faster. His blade was a blur of silver, and the last king fell without a sound. Theron had not just defeated his enemy, he had erased him. And so King Theron sat upon his new, grand throne in the heart of his vast, silent empire. Every knee was bent, every voice was hushed in his presence. He had it all: absolute power, an empire that stretched from sunrise to sunset, a name that was whispered in fear across the continent. He had avenged his loss 1,000 times over. He had ensured no one could ever hurt him again. He was the sole ruler, the undisputed master of the world he had forged. But as he looked out over his conquered domain, there was no triumph in his eyes. The halls were empty, the silence deafening. There was no laughter, no music, no love. He had conquered the world, but in doing so, had lost himself. Alone on his throne, surrounded by the spoils of his rage, the mighty emperor looked at his own reflection in the polished marble floor. A single tear traced a path through the grime on his face, a lone, heartbreaking reminder of the man he once was and the humanity he had sacrificed for a crown of ashes. Thank you for watching this story unfold. If you were moved by the tale of King Theron, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more epic narratives. We'll see you next time.